How you doing? You good? Are you good? Are we ready? Are we going to get out there? I want to tell you something. I want to tell you about winning the election, okay? I want to pick up the themes. I'm very proud to be here. And I want to thank Tony. I want to thank Gigi. I want to thank the entire organization. I want to thank all of you for being here. And I want to tell you, you make the difference. You are the change. You are the most important people in Cook County. And I am not kidding when I say that. I really want to tip my hat to two extraordinary Republicans. We have been in a situation here with Rod Blagojevich and then Pat Quinn, where we didn't know who was going to be leading our party. And so we held our primary, and we had 7 terrific candidates out there. And I have written about that, and I repeat it here tonight, that all of those candidates took time away from their families and from their businesses, from the people who love them so much. Many of them spent a lot of money, and they all put those miles on the car. They got all over the state to give you and you and you and all of us here choices, okay? And they didn't know who was going to come out with the most votes. They didn't know. And I have said in print, and I will repeat tonight, 7 of our buddies went out there. One of them is going to emerge with the most votes, but there is not one loser in that group. And I want to tell you, we already know that there are 2 very big winners. We had one of them here tonight, Bill Brady, and the other one is our friend from DuPage County, State Senator Kirk Dillard. Let's give him a round of applause. Because they've taught us a lot about what we need to know to be in success this year. They've taught us about the class you need to reach out to your fellow citizens. And they've taught us also that with all of that work, all that effort, all that time, driving, fuel, etc., you can still come out 200 votes on the right side or on the other side. And so they have handled it like you would never see 2 Democrats handle it. And they have led us through an object lesson that's going to be important. I'm going to talk about Lincoln here in a second. It's an object lesson that Lincoln learned back in the 1850s and the 40s when he became politically aware. And it's a lesson that is going to help us as we unite, as we reconcile, we come together to work with our neighbors to do exactly what the 3 greatest presidents in our history did. And those presidents, to me, is my list of 3, okay? George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, and Ronald Reagan. Yes. Okay? And I'm going to tell you why. I want to tell you why. George Washington wanted to be a British officer. He wanted to be a man of property, a success. He wanted to be respected. He was a second son, and he knew he had to work twice as hard because he wasn't going to inherit the plantation. He was going to have to do it himself. And he brought into his life self-discipline. And I think of these guys, I know there are probably some lawyers here tonight. Are there any lawyers here tonight? We love you. Okay. We're going to get that right out front. We love the lawyers. But the lawyers, we think of these great founders like Adams and Jefferson. And these were lawyers who were thinking, they're so male. They're solving the world's problems. They're going to make everything right. They're going to order society. They're going to straighten everything out. George Washington ordered himself. George Washington looked inside and said, if I'm going to amount to something, I got to order myself. Okay? And he created that book of self-discipline, and he lived in accordance with it, and he knew how to control his passions so that when he controlled the largest army that had ever existed on this continent, he gave it up. He laid down his sword and handed it back to the Congress. And when he had been president for 2 terms, he gave it up. Some people wanted him to be kind of a king. He was like, no, that's not what this is about. In fact, the George Washington story is when every other person in the world thought he was absolutely nuts, he said, I am going to run this army over the British Empire. I am going to run this army over the British Empire because the British Empire is treating us like serfs. The British Empire is not respecting our inalienable rights. And I'm going to kick them out. Now, imagine what it took in personal self-control to think that way. Everybody thought he was nuts. His friends and his admirers in the Congress gave him that commission, and he delivered. And where government had been oppressing the American colonists, he gave them freedom. And we are the inheritors of his gift. So he's the first great president. Second, Tony's hero. Tony and I share a really good friend, Joe Morris, brilliant guy, heads the Lincoln Legal Foundation. Joe's hero. I work for Jane Thompson. I have the privilege of working with First Lady Jane Thompson. Her husband, Governor Thompson, number 2 in arguing cases before the Illinois Supreme Court. Who set the record? Abraham Lincoln. And they said, hey, Lincoln, you're plumber tall. Abraham Lincoln had such a phenomenal upbringing. And it's I have the privilege of knowing Tony, and we're in that great Cook County situation where Riverside sits astride 2 wonderful townships. It's got its own, and it's also a part of Lyons. So we've got 2, which is great. When I was a kid, I lived in a town, we had 1 township. That was it. So I'm here with Judy, and we're kind of sneaking in, and we're happy to be here. And we, like Dan Patlack, consider it a second home. And I want to say, by the way, I'm on Lyons Township. Mark Rhodes, your former state senator and a mainstay of this organization, asked me to say hi. Let's say hi to Mark Rhodes. Hey, Mark, on YouTube. All right, Mark, we got you. Stick with us for Lincoln and Reagan. All right, I learned all this from Mark Rhodes anyway. But let me tell you. So, we've got Abraham Lincoln out there arguing all those cases in front of the Illinois Supreme Court. So much to know about Lincoln. In Riverside, we brought Orville Vernon Burton last year. And if you have if you've got $20 in your pocket and you find yourself at Borders in LaGrange, go buy The Age of Lincoln, okay? You will give yourself to that book, and what you receive in return, you will treasure with you always. Orville Vernon Burton used to be from the University of Illinois. Now he's down in South Carolina. Just a great guy. Lincoln had an experience in his younger days. There was an experience of what today we would call diversity. Who remembers what that was? Who remembers Lincoln's dawning diversity experience? He served kind of no formal education. Tony's right. So this wasn't exactly a college summer job, but he served on a flatboat. And he actually took cargo south on the Ohio and the Mississippi as far as New Orleans. It was there he saw slaves sold. It was there he saw slaves working. It was there he worked with blacks for the first time. He was coming out of Indiana, coming out of Kentucky, coming out of Southern Illinois, which was hugely segregationist in those days. He had a new experience, and it stayed with him. And when he was commanded by Winfield Scott, whose headquarters was right over here on Scottswood in Riverside, Lincoln was already aware of the differences in people. But he realized those differences were, the foundation was a sameness.